Hello! Welcome back to the sewing room. I'm Lara, and if you clicked on this video, I hope it means that you already understand how important accurate pressing is for your sewing. A lot of my beginning students get really kind of like caught up in like what kind of iron should I buy, or maybe looking for brand recommendations. And that, you know, of course you always want a good iron, but there are lots of tools that are not very expensive that will make your pressing journey in your sewing a lot easier. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, let's start with some things you probably already have in your sewing room. This is a seam gauge, and I pick these up at, well, everywhere. They are very, very often in thrift stores. People give them to me because they know I sew, and they're often quite a bit worse for the wear. They're not, you know, they're not really designed to last forever, and they haven't, but it's better than nothing. So if I'm measuring a 1/4 inch, and this is where this is showing its age, is the stop isn't tight up here. So I assume this is actually where it was probably used the most. So this area has just kind of gotten a little worse for the wear. But you can see between this top line here and this mark here, that's a 1/4 inch. So even if my little stopper isn't staying still, I can still keep an eye on that line and see where that 1/4 inch is to be able to fold. I might also just, my first kind of pressing tool that you probably have is a pencil. And if you see, that happens to be also just about a 1/4 inch wide. Now that doesn't really matter, but if you get tired of kind of handling a bunch of tools, you can say, okay, well, if I can just eyeball this and say the width of that eraser is about the width of what I'm trying to press, then that can save me a little bit of time. So first I always just do a kind of a crease with my hands. And I don't use the steam until I don't have my fingers around where the iron is going to be, because that's where the steam comes out, right? So I would rather risk a slightly wobbly bit that I need to press again than burn my fingers. Fabric can always be repurchased. Burns take a long time to heal and are very annoying, so we want to avoid that. So sometimes once you have, depending on the fabric, once you kind of start going, sometimes it's easy to just keep going. This fabric is wobbling just a little bit, although of course some others would be much worse. But so basically once you start to get your line pressed, you can kind of keep going and then say, okay, this area is not that great, so I'm going to push it back and really hold it and just press that area again. And notice I'm saying press. I'm not ironing here. I'm not sliding the iron around on the fabric. The goal is really to kind of almost use a hopping motion and go from there. So that's tool number one to keep your fingers from getting burnt, that you probably already have. I'm going to move on to a tool that I also really like that you probably need to get. So in terms of measuring, next step up from the kind of sad but perfectly serviceable seam gauge is what I consider kind of the updated version of that tool, which this is actually, I think, billed as like a 5 different tools in one, but the one I use the most is the seam gauge part. So, and this is really nice because then the measurement here is from this nice wide space here to here. And this is plastic, so you can't really press on it, but you can press near it without harm. So again, I'm just gonna pick a little area here, fold down, check the width I'm getting, kind of start the concept with my fingers,
and then finish it with the heat and the steam. Now this is probably something you also don't own, but it's definitely worth owning if this kind of task feels really tedious and irritating to you. I personally really can't do without this thing. I think they call it a hot hemmer, and they come in a couple of different shapes and sizes. It's made by Clover, who I think they also make this guy. I'll look though. And what's great about this is this texture here is a little bit grippy, and it's this kind of synthetic material that's designed to be pressed over. So instead of having to measure and then kind of guess after you've measured, you can actually put the piece right there, fold over, and actually see the mark you're trying to hit, and then also use that edge to press against. I don't know about you, but I think that is way easier, and also actually a slightly more even result than I was getting down here using basically measuring tools in my fingers. And then just for history's sake, I believe this is kind of the predecessor to that tool. And I picked this up at the Textile Center garage sale. I just couldn't resist. I just love it. And it was supposedly designed by the author of the Bishop Method of Sewing books, or the Bishop Method of Clothing Construction books. And the originator of the Bishop Method of Clothing Construction says right there. And I left it in the packaging partly because I love the packaging, but also slight problem. It is metal. It's really just metal. And so I mean, granted, if you're pressing along this edge, you're holding it by this edge, so maybe the idea is it's big enough so that you don't hurt yourself. But on the inside we have, this isn't just packaging, it's also like a little instruction booklet about how to use it. Notice they don't have any tips about not burning yourself. Editing Laura here. I want to point out that there is a caution. There's a caution about not water spotting your fabric. That's what the caution is in the corner there. So yeah, apparently not burning yourself, you're on your own, but don't water spot your fabric. But anyway, copyright 1959, made in USA by Dritz, a company that still makes a lot of wonderful sewing tools to this day. So I don't know, oh gosh, let's try it. Maybe I can overcome my fear. Okay. Now first off, I do think my modern tool is better suited for this 1/4 inch I'm trying to press, because it's marked better for that, frankly. Although this is a 1/4 inch here, so maybe I'll use that line instead. Alright, let's see. Maybe it was me. Use a dry iron in all fabrics that water spot. Crease edges, then use dry press cloth and steam iron. Okay, so I wasn't supposed to hit that with steam. Sorry. Sorry, 70-year-old object. Oops. Oh well, what can you do? So, I shouldn't have hit that with steam. I just habit, I guess. I'll just dry that off. But it did make a very nice press. And if I had flipped it over, I would have noticed somebody did anticipate my complaints about why isn't this marked the same way. It is marked the same way. And marked quite a lot deeper than most modern hemming tools. But just, yeah, so it is there. So if you see one of these at a thrift store or at a garage sale or in your aunt's sewing box. I'm always talking about aunt sewing boxes as if I'm somehow stealing stuff from my aunt. I'm not. I want to be very clear that I'm not. Sewing is something that kind of skipped a generation in my family, but I like to imagine that other people have aunts who have sewing stuff they can have. Now, it did specify dry iron, so I'm not going to use this a whole lot because I don't want to damage it. But anyway, hemming tools.
As always, thank you so much for stopping by. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you haven't been here before, welcome. Either way, I hope this video makes pressing while you're sewing feel like less of a chore.